Stop happening. We need resolution. We have the power. We need restitution. First, we need to talk about how it began. We're all of us supposed to.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Reverend Dr. Wayne M. Weathers on Conversation Unplugged on WWDB 860 AM. It's a blessing to greet each and every one of you here in the city of Philadelphia. Amen. It's just a blessing to greet each and every one of you. Little challenge with my speaker, but we're able to recover today for our online broadcast. So we want to make sure that everybody is heard today. It's a interesting day today. News that has been reverberating throughout the sports world. If you are a Carolina fan, I know I graduated from Duke University Divinity School, but I have to be very candid with you. I am a Carolina fan. So to hear that Roy Williams is now retired as the coach of the Tar Heels, it's a very interesting moment in the sports world today. So before I go any further, I want to give shout outs and kudos to Roy Williams for doing such a great job, with Carolina basketball. And so, hey, coach, great job. To my line brother Terry, I know we are grieving right now that Roy Williams is not going to be the coach, but hey, the rivalry will still continue between Duke and Carolina. I'm blessed to have on the line today Carlos Vega, who's running for district attorney. How you doing, Carlos?
I'm doing fine. Hope you're doing fine, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for joining Conversation Unplugged. A lot to unplug today, a lot to talk about. But I want to start out by personally saying thank you. When we met doing black clergy interviews and everything, and I'll say for those who are listening, I'm not trying to give energy to it. I've been having somebody who's been trolling me and harassing me via text, have an idea where it's coming from. I don't give too much energy to it because, hey, I'm a strong person. I can take it. But really, when I share with, district attorney candidate Carlos Vega about the challenges I was facing, he immediately just put me in contact with some folks, and you really didn't have to do it, and told me process that I should follow. And yet, we didn't even know each other, and you was willing to step out and help. And so I just want to say to you for that, in that regards, on a personal note, from me and my family, I want to say thank you. So thank you, Carlos Vega. So, again, humbled, and thank you for just reaching out. So I want to start out this conversation by raising a question. Tell my listeners who are listening on WWDB 860 AM, also listeners who are listening in Atlanta, Georgia, WWWE, The Real in Atlanta, Georgia, as well as on our Facebook page. Tell us a little bit. Let's just really go into. Tell us why you're running.
The reason I'm running is, and it's my background. My family came from Puerto Rico, and they came to New York, and they had a grocery store, and during the '70s, I saw a lot of violence. My store or my mother's store was robbed at gunpoint, and I worried about her being hurt. I mean, I remember as a kid used to pray that I do good in school and that my mother wouldn't be shot. And that's a sad prayer to have as a child. But I also saw a lot of my friends I went to school with who were really smart got swallowed up by the streets, with heroin and turned to a life of crime. So I always wanted to be a prosecutor because I always felt that I wanted to be that voice, that someone who looked like them, had their same experiences would be that voice for victims as well as those people who've made some mistakes in their lives. They're good people, but did certain things to survive. To have a level of compassion, because especially this time of Easter, the issue of redemption. We're not perfect. We have missteps, but you know what? God still loves us with our faults or not. We can be redeemed. So I did 35 years in the DA's office, the first Latino homicide prosecutor for 30 years. And during the course of the past few years with the current administration in Philadelphia, meaning led by Mr. Krasner, I've seen the murder rate skyrocket. Last year was 499. As of this day today, we have 120, and if it doesn't slow down, we may have 600 or 700 murders. So why am I coming forward? Because of all the mothers in the cases I had have been crying out, saying, our children are dying. The DA's office turned their back on us, and we need somebody who has commitment and competence.
Wow, wow. Thank you for sharing that. So, we've talked in previous settings and things of that nature, and I really want to get to just come right out the back and just, I'm sorry, come right out the back and just ask some very, questions that's been in the media. So there was an article published in the Philadelphia Inquirer. It says Philadelphia DA Larry Krasner cast Carlos Vega as a Team Trump. And it goes on to say, and this was written on March 26, 2021 by Chris Brennan. And it says the following: Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner this week touted his campaign slogan, promises made, promises kept, but rallied more often with this politically potent point: my opponents are Donald Trump fans. Krasner appeared Monday in a virtual candidates forum hosted by Philadelphia Bar Association along with the Democratic primary challenger Carlos Vega and Republican Chuck Peruto. And Krasner shrugged off Peruto in the November general election, focusing his fire on Vega, a career homicide prosecutor Krasner fired in 2018 when he first took office. So let's talk about that per se. Let's talk about that per se. Why is Krasner attempting to try to label you as being a Trump supporter or connected with Donald Trump? Is that a fair or unfair assessment?
It's totally unfair. Number one, I'm a lifelong Democrat. When I registered to vote, just like my family, we are Democrats. And I remember in that debate, he said that I'm the fake Democrat, which I don't understand. He also accused me of being supported by Donald Trump, the Proud Boys, and white supremacist groups. And, when you think of my name is Carlos Modesto Vega. You don't get any more Latin than that. So I don't think one of those groups would really be after me. And finally, when he talks about the Fraternal Order of Police that he says are white supremacists, he, in 2017, when he ran for office, asked for their endorsement. And they had endorsed Donald Trump, and he still asked for their endorsement. So I represent everyone. I'm asking for the endorsement of all organizations. The FOP is just one of them. So why the FOP, endorse me? It could be because I'm not Larry Krasner. It could be because of my 35 years experience. So all I know is I'm not supported by any of those groups, but it's casting, and I say it's a dog whistle. He's running, and we know now his policies and what it's done to the city. So he'd rather say those buzzwords than talk about the crime that is happening in our city in the past 4 years, how our city is in peril and our youth is dying at record numbers. And I'd love to share those numbers with you when you ask another question. But
sure,
I did some statistics last night, and I had to redo my math because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And that's from his own data board.
Wow. Can we unpack just a little bit further here? When you talk about, because, buzzwords and trying to label you as Donald Trump, and let's talk about the FOP. There are some within the African American community, they are very suspect or may not be prone to support you because of the FOP's endorsement. And I'm just going to be real. McNesby doesn't come across as a friend to African Americans in Philadelphia. Matter of fact, not just African Americans, Black, brown individuals in Philadelphia. So there's a strained relationship with the FOP as well as African American as well as other minority communities. So with McNesby endorsing you and everything, is it fair to tag you as, how can you say, an ally of the FOP? Or how would you speak to that nature of being tagged as an ally to the FOP instead of being a district attorney for the people, especially minority communities?
Okay. We see that we're under Krasner, the relationship between the police and the FOP is horrible, and he's putting fuel on the fire. What I would say about the FOP is this: it's a union like any other union, and the issue is this: unlike Mr. Krasner, I am the only candidate who has actually arrested and prosecuted bad cops and put them in jail. Krasner, under his current administration, has not prosecuted or put a single officer in prison. So I don't know what he's talking about. And in terms of, of the FOP, his leadership style, I'm talking about Krasner, you have to uh, mend those bridges and work with people and bring in the community to see what their needs are. And he has not done that. He's separate them. I'll use the example of this morning. There was a breakfast because it's Easter, and we call it a celebration,
Mm-hmm.
which is the families of all officers who were killed on duty. They give a breakfast to their family and children. And what we did there, regardless of what you think of the FOP, all those families were there. And the great majority were African American. They were the wives and children and sisters of black officers who died in the line of duty. And the police commissioner was there, who's African American, Commissioner Outlaw. Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General, was there to lend support and thank them for their service and the ultimate sacrifice that their family members did. Uh, and he wasn't there. And it further fractures it. It's not about him or McNesby. It's about those people, our community, officers who have fallen in the line of duty, and their surviving families. It's. I think we need to get a hold of ourselves, put our pride aside, and say it's about community, it's about love, and our city is dying. Let's put aside our differences and work together to address this problem.
Wow. So you're saying that there was an event? Can you explain
Yeah,
that event
and
again? Yeah. Uh huh.
it's an event for fallen officers, right? And what it is all the officers who died in the line of duty, we invite their families for a breakfast during Easter time.
Right.
And what it is you'll see children, the mothers of those officers, the children of those officers, their sisters and wives are there. So you'll see a lot of women are widows raising children. A lot of the older ladies have lost their son, all in the line of duty. And to pay respect to that loss of life, because when you think of it, they gave their lives for the protection of our citizens, our city, to not have the top law enforcement officer to at least pay respect to those family members is very sad. I mean, Josh Shapiro is the attorney general. He came. The police commissioner, an African American woman, the first woman of color to lead the police department, was there to give homage, honor, and respect to the sacrifice that those families made. And I think you should be there. And that's what creates an atmosphere of respect and love. And we could mend those bridges. But when you stay away, who is he harming? McNesby or those family members? They want to see him, and he's not.
Wow. Wow. So as we transition, on, and thank you for addressing the hard subjects or some of the hard questions. That's what Conversation Unplugged is about. And don't want to, it's at the forefront. So I definitely wanted to give you an opportunity to address it. Moving forward, let's do this because you have some statistics and we have some, information that we definitely want to impact. We're going to go into a 30-second, let's do a 1 minute station break and then let's come back. All right. So we're going to do a 1 minute station break right there. Conversation Unplugged, WWDB 860 AM, as well as 1100 AM, The Real Atlanta, Georgia. Be back in 1 minute.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes two. There's pool.
So feedback would occur because one of your things is probably
Yeah, I did. I don't know what happened here.
Ranch sauce?
Now it's on.
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed, could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
We're back on WWDB 860 AM Conversation Unplugged. Carlos Vega, I just wanted to share with you, I had to make some adjustments. My speaker wasn't working for my Facebook Live page, so I really had to go to a 1-minute station break to make the adjustments. And as you can see, we made the adjustments. So I wanted to make sure you are heard as we are broadcasting live on my Facebook page. Let me adjust the sound just a little bit. So getting back. So you talked about an issue that's affecting Philadelphia right now. The crime is escalating extremely high, not just in Philadelphia, but really throughout various metropolitan cities. But we are in the Philadelphia area. So can we talk about that? I know you have some statistical figures and everything, and there's things that you would like to do, and there's some challenges that you believe that, or there's some things that you would like to challenge the current district attorney on. So can you talk about that? What is the whole concept of this crime increasing in Philadelphia, and what would you do differently than what the current district attorney is doing? Because, and we've talked before, he's viewed favorably with many in the minority communities in Philadelphia. So how would you be different? So can you start off talking about what are the challenges that Philadelphia is facing in regards to crime, and what would you do differently than what the current DA is doing right now?
Well, the first thing you have to do is deal with consequences. And, he gives the talking point of painting everyone with the same brush. There are two types of people committing crime. There are those who are committing crime of violence, which puts our children and our communities in danger. But then there are those who commit nonviolent crimes. And these are people who are addicted by drugs, mental illness, lack of opportunity, who are committing some crimes to survive, that we have to address not by incarceration, but by giving them the help they need. I'm talking about, pre-arrest drug treatment programs, mental health programs, dealing with issues of homelessness. Because it's not putting them in jail, because they're good people who are at a low point in their lives. But then there are those violent people who are shooting, robbing, and carrying illegal guns. Those are two separate people. So I believe in consequences, and to address the problem is this. I would have to, as Mr. Kress has done, he's fractured his relationship with the police department, the Attorney General's office, and the U.S. Attorney's office. You have to work together if you're going to tackle what's occurring in our inner city. And he has fractured that relationship, and he's going it alone. You need help, you need allies, you need the community. What I would institute is a program done by Harvard University, which is called Focus Deterrence. What they do, and we address the issue of at-risk youth. And when I say at risk, they're in danger of dying or in danger of being arrested committing a crime of violence. What that program had done, and is very successful, is you address the issue of who's committing the violence in certain communities. And it's really a small group. And it's propelled either by a drug competition or, and we're in the age of social media, of people insulting each other on Twitter and Instagram, and it escalates to the point that they're shooting each other. When you bring in those groups, what we do is the police, and I'm talking about all law enforcement, state, federal, and local, do an investigation. You bring in community leaders, church leaders, and business leaders and social workers. And you bring in the leaders at the top who are perpetrating the violence, and we do what's called a call-in session. And you address it and saying, we are giving you another avenue. We're going to give you job opportunities, education opportunities. You have to put down the guns yourself and tell the young ones to follow suit. But the consequence is this. Either take that hand to help or redemption, or you continue what you're doing. If they do, then the consequences are severe. They are arrested and they are prosecuted. And that is not what is happening here. I'll give a statistic. This year alone, the police, as of yesterday, have arrested 233 people with illegal guns. Now, that's a staggering number, 233. What the DA's office has done, they have withdrawn 147 of those cases. So the consequence is this. There's 147 people who the police took the gun off of them. It's illegal, but there was no consequence, which means I can get a gun again. Nothing's going to happen to me. Now, last night I did a stat which I couldn't believe and had to redo my math. I took all the numbers of this year of the shootings, gunpoint robberies, aggravated assault with a gun, and gun possession. So far this year, there were 497 arrests. What the DA's office on the Crest has done is he has withdrawn the charges on 350 of them. And I did the math again because I couldn't believe it. It's from his own data board. So 497 people have been arrested for committing a crime with a gun, and he has dropped the charges on 350. That is saying to 350 people, there is no consequence to your doing an act of violence. And we can't have that because that's why it happened. The loss of life of 499. We've lost 120 this year. And if it doesn't slow down, we may lose 600 to 700 children in our city. So I believe it's a consequence. I believe in redemption and helping those people who are drug addicted with mental health issues and homelessness issues, and we can do that. But he is not using those programs, underutilizing them, and got rid of some. And one thing that is staggering that I spoke to, we had an agency which was a victims group. We called them family murder victims. Those individuals would contact the families to get them counseling for their children, resources, housing. He evicted that organization that has been in the VA's office since 1984. They were evicted this past November. They no longer have a key to that office. They don't have room in that office. So once again, he's doing it alone because he knows better. And we have to get back to basics, which is the short-term solution is addressing the violence and getting help. Are there long-term solutions? Yes. Poor education, lack of opportunity, lack of jobs, but we need to reinvest in our communities. It's long-term, but short-term, I have to keep our youth alive. I have to keep our neighborhood safe.
So, Carlos Vega, there is a question I got on my Facebook page, and the question is the following. What do you see the role of a district attorney being in assisting in building community rapport between citizens and police, especially around traffic stops and other nonviolent exchanges?
Okay. The issue we have to do is multifaceted. Number one, we need to engage community leaders in the education of the police. What I've seen being 35 years in law enforcement, from the police academy and on, the police educate themselves, and it develops a mentality of us against the world. Mm-hmm. I think if you start from the police academy, that not only is being taught tactical issues from the police, but have members of the DA's office, judges, defense bar, and also community groups educating them of what they do right, what they do wrong. Mm-hmm. They will no longer have that knee-jerk reaction of, you don't know what we're going through. We're part of that process. So that's number one. Number two is the DA's office needs to have an open door policy. What I would do is I'd schedule, let's say, every Monday or Thursday, and schedule 3 hours, and that is guaranteed, not a special event, where community groups go there to air their concerns, what their needs are, and have the police brass, and I'm not talking about the high inspectors, but lieutenants and captains there to listen to what the needs are in their specific districts, and they have a dialogue. Mm-hmm. And community groups know I can be there every Thursday, and they're going to be there. At which point, it starts with dialogue. It starts with talking to each other. So I think that's important to bridge that gap, rather than putting fuel on the fire. Is no, bring people in to talk, and that's what's not being done. So I think it's really a really common sense approach. That way, the police, because the police want to be safe, but they need to hear from us, because we want them in our neighborhoods, but we want them to do it properly.
So, with the escalating rate of that's bad choice word, homicides and gun violence happening in Philadelphia, one of the concerns is a push for law and order. So, in your agenda to restore community safety, what would be your approach for community safety, but yet not taking on a Nixon, former President Nixon approach, or former Mayor Rizzo approach that focuses on law and order, which law and order basically means let's keep minority communities in order?
Yeah, and what I would do is, and I would not run on a campaign of law and order. It's a campaign of safety. I was just last Friday at a group at City Hall that they named the event "Not at My Watch," all the members there were communities of color, African American, and rightly so, because 87% of all murder victims are African American, 12% are Latino. Think those numbers are staggering. And they were there and they were asking, we want police presence. You know, they want Operation Safe Streets where there was an officer on every corner. Some people even said they want stop and frisk. And I go, you know, that's illegal. You can't do that. But they want some order or safety. But what, as I said, with focused deterrence is I want to reach out to the youth that is perpetrating the violence and tell them there are other avenues. We're giving you other avenues, but you have to take that hand. You know, a lot of us maybe listening to this have lived, you know, long, have had ups and downs, and are in the workforce and raise a family. And you understand that there have to be consequences to make you more responsible. But also, I believe, once again, when we use the word redemption, is this: there are people that make mistakes. They make mistakes because they're young and dumb. Others because of their circumstances to survive. So we have to give them alternatives, but we cannot stand back and let our youth die at the numbers that they are dying. It's unacceptable. So it's a multifaceted approach of bringing in opportunity to our communities, talking to our communities, and making them safe. We have to partner with law enforcement and the communities. And once again, I say, we don't want the police as oppressors. We want them as a partner. And also, the police need to get out of their police car and walk in the street and go in businesses so we can know their name. Now, there are two programs that two captains did, and it's not a policy, but it's a very interesting thing they did. One captain, he did a program where all their officers got a picture, like a baseball card with their stats, where they went to high school, what sports they liked. And they put out in the community that as a child, if you had the full set, you go to the police district and you get a toy. And that was great because now you had kids running to the police car saying, can I have your card? And then going to a police station, not because their parents got into trouble, but because they're getting a toy. That is novel. I know one Latino captain in the Spanish area. What they do every Christmas and winter is they save money, join forces with the Salvation Army, and their officers go and hand out coats and turkeys to the community. Suddenly, you're not being seen as a bad person. You're saying, like, wow, he's giving me a coat, he's giving me food. And it changed the dynamic of, rather than being afraid of an officer, it's a person that he's like me and he's helping me. So it's those little changes that I would talk to the police department to institute it on a broad basis, that all the districts do that.
Wow. Wow. So when we talk about the whole concept of community, etc., what alternative programs would you utilize where someone who comes in with low-level crimes is not automatically locked up, sent to jail, sent on state road, etc.? You know, those who are drug addicted, those who are involved in prostitution, you know, others. What kind of alternative programs, although they're, you know, they're arrested, they're being prosecuted, again, what kind of alternative programs would you utilize in order not to automatically send them to jail, but for those who may need help, whether it's mental, drug rehab, etc.? What kind of alternative programs would you utilize if you were elected as district attorney?
Well, first I would bring in what I would call community court. Those are people who are doing very low-level crimes, let's say shoplifting, dumping, whatever. And they go in that program and they're given, you know, without getting a record, do some community service. And we see how many yards are dirty, full of dirt. So they do that, clean up, and their record is expunged. We don't arrest them. We don't give them a record. Do not affect them. In terms of when you say prostitutes, you know, we have to realize these women are slaves to human trafficking. And when you think of it, these ladies are someone's mother, someone's daughter or sister. And they have that addiction. And I would do a program. And once again, Krasner has underutilized it because he's decided he will not arrest any prostitute. He calls them sex workers. I call them, they are human trafficked, okay? Because these women are slaves to an addiction and doing something to feed that addiction. So what I would do is institute, once again, the Dawn program that was working before Krasner, which is pre-arrest. We would bring in these ladies and say, who is your pimp, who are selling the drugs, and we put them to get counseling for their drugs, okay, inpatient. Secondly, when they address that, they would get parenting classes because everybody forgets this. They're usually the mothers of someone, and that child is at minimum being neglected or sometimes abused and anger management. And then they get vocational training, get their GED, and put them back on their feet. And, as they say, as a recovering alcoholic say, persons, places, things. We don't put them back in that environment. They don't go back to those people, and they don't do those things. Very successful program. But right now, when I last looked, there are only 3 females in that program. And what's interesting in that program, they have uh, several nuns volunteering work. And I know we can't preach God, but just having the sense of those ladies who have devoted their lives to Jesus, because I think you need a sense of religion, and you really need it in your darkest hours. I think it's a good program. But when you have a policy of no, I'm not going to put a prostitute uh, in prison or arrest them because they're sex workers, I disagree. So that's one program. There's a program dealing with it's called the JET program, which was successful. It addresses young men that are selling drugs that are not addicted to drugs. It's that they don't know of other job opportunities. That program is we teach them, counsel them, get them education, put them on their feet, that there are alternatives. Very good program, only 12% recidivist rates. And when they succeed in that program, we seal their record. They don't have a felony.
Mm-hmm.
So it's issues like that. And finally, those people who finally get arrested and do have a record, I would put into what I've always learned from when I worked 15 years at UPS at night to support my family, is this: learn and earn. In that program, when you're on probation, you decide how long you're on probation. And the issue with probation, people are always told, you're on probation, figure it out. No, I'm going to tell you what to do. If you get, clean and sober, I start reducing your probation. You get parenting classes, it's reduced again. You get counseling, it's reduced again. So finally, when you get a job, and I'm talking about on the books that you're a taxpayer, I seal your record and terminate your probation because I've seen it. That person who enters probation at that time is at their lowest point, but when they achieve all those challenges and are successful, they're a different person. They've regained their self-worth and their dignity. I remember as a young DA, there was a judge, and she was African American, Judge Tamara Myers Clark. Whenever her probationers got their GED, they were brought in, we bought a cake, and we celebrated. And it meant the world to them. And some people would laugh at us and say it was corny. I thought it meant the world because it was the first time somebody said, you've achieved, and we recognize it, and we're proud of you. So I think those are a lot of the programs I would bring in. He's gotten rid of a bunch of them, and he's underutilizing a bunch of them. So I believe we have to address that issue of nonviolent people. They're good people. They've made mistakes. They can be redeemed. We have to send that handout saying, I'm helping you. This is the path to redemption. And they either could take it or not.
So before we go on a station break, Jeff Hayes raised another question. The question is, do you see domestic radicalism in the rise of white supremacist groups being a legitimate concern within metropolitan police forces? How does your platform address this issue that seems to have a nationwide presence?
It's a difficult issue to address because of this. If you talk about a white supremacist movement within an organization, they're usually secret. Like me as a Latino, they're not going to tell me we're starting this group. It's hidden. So we have to have a system of checks and balances. And if there's the suspicion that is occurring, we need other agencies to investigate it. And I'm talking about the Attorney General's office of the federal government. I don't think we can do it locally because I don't think we can investigate ourselves with a problem that is that dangerous and that secretive. So we would have to put agents that have no loyalty to a particular law enforcement agency to find out if it exists and then root it out that you can prosecute them. So I think that's what it is. In terms of domestic radicalism, it's an issue with social media, and we see it both in escalating violence in communities of color when I'm talking about the texting and the Instagram and the insults. Once again, with YouTube and other forms of social media, there are people being radicalized, and it could be to white supremacy, to jihad, to local gang fights, and that is a difficult problem that I would have to bring in community leaders to say, because I think it's number one, as a parent of a 17-year-old, we have to monitor what they're doing on their phones and their computers. The schools need to lend a hand in that. And I think church leaders and what I've seen lacking in court a lot of times is I see a lot of the youth do not have a sense of God. They, and I can't control that, making someone, turn to Jesus or God or whatever you want to call that higher being. So it's a very complicated problem. It could be attacked and addressed, but the way to really address it is I need you, the community, you, the parent, you, the pastor, to help me, because we're outsiders in law enforcement. You're right there at the ground level talking to that youth and hopefully telling them there's another way, and rather than radicalization, teaching a message of respect, of love, and responsibility.
Wow. So we're a little bit off schedule right now, but we're going to go to a 30-second station break on WWDB 860 AM as well as WWWE 1100 AM, the real Atlanta, Georgia. Be back in 30 seconds.
At any given moment, somewhere in America, a baby is taking a first step, a developmental milestone. But for too many parents, a baby's first steps aren't just a milestone, they're a miracle. These are the parents of babies who were born prematurely or with birth defects. It's a crisis affecting more than 500,000 babies in the United States each year. You can help them by joining volunteers like you who walk in March for Babies. The money you raise funds research and local programs that help babies overcome the challenges of premature birth and birth defects. Together, our steps make stronger, healthier babies a reality for thousands of families. Sign up today at marchforbabies.org to take the steps that help make milestones and even miracles possible. Who will you march for?
We're back on WWDB Conversation Unplugged. We're back on Conversation Unplugged on WWDB 860 AM, WWWE 1100 AM, the real Atlanta, Georgia. We are blessed to have our guest, Carlos Vega, who is running for district attorney here in the city of Philadelphia. So thank you for joining, Conversation Unplugged. There's one piece that you spoke about, but I wanted you to elaborate on. As a district attorney, the one thing people don't understand or don't know is that when you, not as a district attorney, I believe when you worked in the DA's office, that you not only worked in the DA's office during the day, but you was also a UPS supervisor at night. Can you just expound on that, just, for the audience who are listening?
Okay. I'm a father of 3 children. I have one son that lives in Ireland, but I raised my younger 2. My daughter's 24 now, my youngest is 17, but I got custody of my daughter when she was 5, and my little guy when he was 8. And my mother put me and my siblings through a Catholic school education because she believed religion was very important. And I myself, although I don't preach, I do have a sense of God and prayer, and I wanted my children to be raised in a religious household. So when I reached the point that I had to raise them and put them in school because it's not free, I had a choice to leave the DA's office and work at a big firm and make money for big business, or to stay in the DA's office. Because of my background, it sounds strange, but I felt like I was turning my back on all those mothers who lost their children. I couldn't do that. So what I did was, for 15 years, I worked at UPS at night. So my schedule was up at 6, get the kids ready for school, make their lunch, drop them off at school, prosecute murder cases by day. At night, pick up the kids, do homework, make their dinner, send it to the babysitter, and I would work at UPS till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. Did that for 15 years because I was able to put them through school. My youngest still is in Catholic school. He's in Catholic high school, although I hate this virtual thing because it's really hard learning that way. But that was my commitment. And, to think of that, I did that to stay there because you don't make a lot of money. And this will bring a statistic I want to say about the current DA's office. There are 319 DAs in the DA's office right now in the Krasner. Only 45 are African American. Of the DAs making over $80,000, 114 make over $80,000. Only 12 are African American. In his new class that he brought in 64 new DAs, only 12 are African American. So I was at a crossroads, and I worked a second job to stay there, to raise a family, pay student loans, and I really think the DA's office should be reflective of our community, and to have only 45 African American DAs in an office of 319 lawyers, I think is terrible, and only 12 making over $80,000 is once again. So I say it. I was the only prosecutor who's Latino in the DA's office for 30 years. Think of it. I was the only one. I cannot believe there was not another Latino as smart as me or as good a lawyer that couldn't come up to those ranks. And I did this from the stats from the city controller. So I'm going to tell you right now, under Krasner's administration, this is either the whitest DA's office or the office that is so lacking in people of color. And I know when I come in, if I'm elected, is I'm going to make my office reflective of what the city looks like. And I'm going to pay people of color a wage that they can raise a family, that they can honor that commitment of that community service. Because I understand the struggle, because 15 years at UPS was not a nice time, because anyone listening to me worked at UPS, they know this. There is no air conditioning at UPS in the summer, and there is no heat heat in the winter. It's a very hard job.
Wow. And just for the record, anytime pastors or preachers engage or interact with those who are running for a particular office, there is a narrative that's generated that, oh, they are getting paid to do this. So let me say on the record, this is volunteer. When I asked Carlos Vega to come on the show, he agreed. There's been no endorsement, no money exchange, everything. I just like the narrative that I heard when we sat down and talked. So I just want to put that out there. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
And I agree, because I've seen my challenging the incumbent, and those of you in Philadelphia, if you read the Inquirer, you don't know I exist. You wouldn't know there's a race, and that's why I'm glad I've given you this opportunity to speak to you and have your listeners hear that there is a race for district attorney, and the primary is May 18th, and that there is a person of color who I believe the first time is amply qualified to run the district attorney's office. And what speaks volumes is this: of last week, and it wasn't put in the paper, the Democratic Party is not endorsing Larry Krasner. Now think of it. He is the incumbent, and they are not endorsing him. That hasn't happened. The last time that happened was 45 years ago, when a politician was running and he was under investigation for some illegal activity. So it speaks volumes of what the party is saying, that they will not endorse the incumbent.
So why is it that you are, correct me if I'm wrong, you are the first Latino that's running for the DA's office, district attorney, and yet you are not getting the, how can you say, the media buzz as making history, being the first Latino running for the office of district attorney? I guess KRS-One, one of my favorite hip hop artists, would say on Blueprint of Ghetto Hip Hop. Why is that?
Well, I can only give you my theories.
Yes.
Because during the course of Mr. Krasner's being in the DA's office, I don't see very many negative things about him. They minimize the murder rate, the shooting rate. They minimize, scandalous issues that happened in his office. I'll use this example, because you have to clean home before you clean the outside, which is, he had one DA at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so drunk she defecated on someone's steps. Another DA taking a walk during office hours left her child in a locked car in the summer with heat that the police had to break the window. Uh, you know, or let's say under his CARES program, an individual who's given the task of talking to families of victims. He was in broad daylight at 10 o'clock having sex with a male prostitute and then shot and killed him. And there's no consequences. So I think he's in over his head. If you read the paper, it's very minimized. The stats I gave you, you're not going to see in the press. The first time they talked about numbers finally was 2 days ago, and they talk about stats as opposed to showing what I just showed you. So I think there's this, I don't know if you call them limousine liberals or people in power that believe they know better than us, meaning people in our community. And I think they see me as a threat because I would think it would be very big to have the first Latino running for, other than mayor, this is one of the highest offices, and you wouldn't know there's a race or that I exist. So there's something going on. I think it's obvious if you think about it. They want him with his what I call social experiment to stay here. But remember, those people with money don't suffer the harm that people in our community suffer. One thing that came out in the press the last time they reported us to donors, all my donors are from Philadelphia. All his donors are billionaires from California. So what does that say? Those billionaires don't live here, and they live in gated communities. We don't. We take the subway, and we hear gunshots in our neighborhood.
Wow. So let's do this 30 for 30 seconds. It's 12:47. We're going to take a 30-second station break on Conversation Unplugged on WWDB 860 AM as well as WWWE 1100 AM Atlanta, Georgia. Be back in 30 seconds.
It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to today's graduation ceremony. Students, when you hear the reason or reasons for your absences throughout the years, please exit the auditorium with your high school diploma. Once you've exited, remove your cap and gown and proceed into the unknown. Too tired. Family trip. Part-time job. Helping around the house. Sick day. Starting the holidays early. Just because.
Starting in the 6th grade, students who miss 18 days or more for any reason will fall behind and risk not graduating high school. How many days of school has your child missed this year? Absences add up. Keep track at boostattendance.org today. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
We're back on Conversation Unplugged on WWDB 860 AM as well as WWE Real 1100 AM. And so we have our guest, Carlos Vega. As I transition from one speaker to the next, I like my batteries get ready to run out for my Facebook page and everything. I want to ask just a few questions here. Krasner's, and again, this isn't endorsement or anything like that. I just like raising questions. And Larry Krasner, anybody watching, would love to interview you as well. Just understand that when you come on Conversation Unplugged, there isn't any, how can you say, we're going to raise some questions. That's the bottom line. So, with your passion, what is your passion that gives you the desire to run for office? I know we have, quotes and statistics and everything like that, but what is your passion and your desire that motivates you to run for office? And how would you take that passion and desire to make a difference, not only in black, brown communities, but also to make a difference in Philadelphia overall?
Well, I think my passion came as a young man, helping my mother run a grocery store. I mean, as I said, I used to pray for my mother not to be hurt. So I saw the violence growing up. I saw my friends swallowed up with addiction and saw violence on them. And I saw that, we need safety, but we also need opportunity, some reform. So my passion was, and that's why I became the DA, because I always said I wanted to be the voice of victims. And when I came in the DA's office in 1982 under Governor Rendell, whenever you had a file, they would say, call your family. And whenever I talk to my families of murder victims who survived, I always call them my family. And I even said when I was going to retire, I told the office, I have a nice pension from UPS and from the city. I will work for free and mentor the new DAs and even try 3 or 4 murders a year, murders for free. So that was my commitment. I felt that leaving the office, I don't know, I don't feel like I'm old, although I'm 64, is I still have this energy and this passion. And then over the past 2 years, so many mothers calling me saying, the DA's office turned their back on me. Look at what they're doing. They didn't notify me. These DAs are not doing their job. They're not trained. I just can't sit back because, yeah, I've done it so long, and I'm a father, and my children are the age group of the next victim. My boy's 17. He dresses with the hoodie and the sweats. You know, he looks like the next person shot. My daughter's 24. So as a parent, I can't, I have this passion. I still have strength, and I believe I can make a difference because I can say, when all is said and done, for 35 years, I try to make a difference. 35 years, I try to make our city safe and exercise compassion for those people that I thought we can help. And I still have that drive. And, people think I'm crazy for running for office, and many a morning I wake up thinking I'm insane. But I'll tell you this. 2 weeks ago, I was at my lowest point saying, I can't, this race is killing me. And I went back home to New York, and I prayed to the Virgin Mary that we have in my house and my grandmother's ashes, saying, please give me the strength. And, I left New York saying, I can do this, because it's a roller coaster, but I have that drive and passion. And I really think, being in the front line 35 years, I know what works, what doesn't. I have ideas. The judges respect me. The defense bar respects me. Law enforcement, I'm talking about local, state, and federal, respect me. So I know I can work with them. And, I'll give you one thought that I had, which was the Learn and Earn program for probationers.
Yes.
But I also, because I love talking to our youth, I want to do an adopt a school program. Now think of it, with 319 DAs, they would be forced to adopt a school and go to that school, from 8 to 3, to see every other week, to see the parents, to see the children, see them go to school, go in there, have coffee and donuts with the moms and dads, get to know them, get to know that community, be a role model for those kids to not, when I grew up, the only lawyer I ever saw was Perry Mason on TV. See one that you can touch and talk to and guide you, and hopefully get them engaged, because, there are a lot of DAs that go, ooh, I got to drive through this neighborhood with my windows closed. Now, these are good neighborhoods, except they're held hostage by maybe a few bad apples. And hopefully those mothers could say, this is the issue in my community. One might be prostitution, might be a drug quarter, it might be people throwing garbage on a certain street. And they'll be safe, rather than calling the police, calling a DA, say, listen, I got that person's cell number. Like my mother's called me, have that. Have those DAs be engaged, and hopefully they'll love those children and say, you know what? I want to be a basketball coach. I want to be a soccer coach. And since they're lawyers and, more worldly, they can go to McDonald's or Burger King saying, will you sponsor the team? Will you buy the T-shirts? And that's how we build trust in the community and how we build a community. So the change I'm going to make is, I want to help with education. I want to help with opportunity. And finally, in running for office, I talked to so many unions, and they've committed to me that they say, listen, you could be part of the trades, a plumber, electrician. You can do all that stuff, and we'll train you, and it doesn't matter whether you have a record or not, which means when you reintegrate into society and you leave prison, you can have a good job that has benefits, has a pension plan. You're making $75 an hour. That, industry, opportunity will make us safer. And I think, having lived it and being poor, because I'll use an example, because every day is a good day for me. I remember as a boy eating a plate of white rice and a fried egg, and I knew we were in trouble. I didn't say anything because you're a kid, but you're going, wow. But you know what? I never went hungry, but and I believe, since I've been there and survived, I think I have a compassion for people who are down on their luck. And I know people have that inner thing that we can't save everyone, but I really wanted to give them a chance to be better, to be saved, and that's why I've got that passion. I'm doing it because I don't want to hear the numbers of children dying. The worst thing in the world, and I've seen it for 30 years. Every mother has told me they killed my baby. And I tried to bring them justice, but also when the court was done, and you look around, you got one mother who lost her child forever, but then there's another mother who's lost their child to the system. So those are two broken hearts of two mothers, and I think I've tried to make a difference in 35 years, and I believe I still have that passion and that strength to still continue on that mission to make us better.
Well, Carlos Vega, I want to thank you for coming on Conversation Unplugged on WWDB. We also broadcast on WWWE 1100 AM Atlanta, Georgia. We have to bring this interview to a close in the last 5 seconds and everything. What would be some closing words would you like to say to the audience?
Well, the closing word is I would want you to get on my website so you can see what I'm about, which is vegaforda.com, VEGAFORDA.com. And what I would say is this. May 18th is the difference we make of what's going to happen in the next 4 years in this city. We could have what's happening and more of the same, or bringing a change with some new ideas of someone who cares. So I'm asking you to read up on me and be committed, because our future is at stake. When I say our future, it's our children.
Well, good. Well, thank you for joining Conversation Unplugged. I know this won't be the last time we'll be conversing. And again, Larry Krasner, you and your representatives, love to interview you as well. So, hey, thank you, Carlos Vega. Thank you for coming on Conversation Unplugged. And for my listeners, thank you for listening. This conversation will continue on www.spiritualconnectradio.com. We're unplugging the conversation. Little Nas X and the sneakers that just sold this weekend. That's a whole nother subject. Join us again at 5 o'clock. Take care and God bless.
Conversation Unplugged. Conversation Unplugged.